Why don't you start with how you got into psychedelics?
How did I get into psychedelics? I always feel I was probably predestined to get into psychedelics. It was such an obvious move in my life. I grew up in a very incredibly beautiful but totally isolated place on the edge of a fen with 3 moats and a very long track to get to. And we didn't go in for friends. So it was a solitary childhood, and I had nothing much to do but mooch around and have little mystical experiences, which kind of colored my life, and then dream about the future and brave acts I'd do, like watering the desert was one of my favorite imaginations. And then anyhow, I was lucky enough to have a godfather who was a Buddhist monk, but I never met him. But at some point I left home and went to school, I think at 13. And at 15, 16, I won the school science prize and wanted books on Buddhism because I was passionate about mysticism.
I warn people, and I apologise for being rude, I'm going to be monitoring the time,
yes,
and might, because as much as I want to hear about Bertie and the Buddhist texts, if we focus on okay, you know, maybe your first experience with psychedelics and why you decided psychedelics were exciting.
I decided, my first experience was in 1965. When actually I was looking for another compound, but someone gave me psychedelic.
I think you need to speak close to the microphone.
Anyway,
thank you.
My first experience was with LSD in 1965, and then I had the wonderful opening of the mystical experience, which I've been studying for the last 20 years, and thought this is incredible. But it's almost like a heavenly funfair more than a way of life. And so that went on, and it was a very exciting, euphoric period at the beginning of the 60s or mid-60s.
And what made you want to commit your life to psychedelics, I suppose? What was it that made you think, okay, what was the value of psychedelics in your view? Perhaps.
Well, that came the following year when I met and came together for a long period with a Dutch scientist who had exceptional insight into how he was a doctor, how psychedelics worked at the physiological level, i.e. the effect on blood, and how it underlies the experience of psychedelics. And so that made it very much more controllable. And for the next kind of 25 years, we lived on LSD, but...
Excellent parenting.
But we worked on it. I mean, we weren't really dancing in Hyde Park. We were studying psychology, physiology.
But what did you think the potential for LSD or psychedelics was, kind of thing?
Just amazingly enhancing of consciousness. I found one could think better, much deeper. One could see more beauty, one could hear more beauty, one could had more energy, more focus, more... It really was in the cognitive state that it really amazed me, apart from the mystical state. And apart from, for instance, I smoked nicotine because I was so tall as a child. I wanted to stop growing, so I smoked nicotine. And so then Bart, the scientist, said it was a disgusting habit. So I said, okay, I'll give it up. I'll take a trip and decide to give it up. And true enough, I never smoked again.
And actually, my dad had the same experience. He smoked 60 cigarettes a day until he took LSD and then gave it up on the So that's an N of 2 for the scientists around here.
So then, 40 years later, when Roland Griffiths, we were discussing what, I had $5,000 to donate to a research subject. He said, what would you suggest? I said, well, why not giving up nicotine? That's what I did on LSD. So then that became a study which has had 80% success rate.
Just trying to stay on track. I suppose that the next question is, obviously there was, this excitement around the 60s, and even before that. I think what's relevant for everyone today is that, back in the 50s, psychedelics were the next big thing in psychiatry. And so we've kind of been here before, and then obviously what happened, as everyone knows, is they got banned and research completely ground to a halt. So I guess the next big chapter was you setting up the Beckley Foundation, and maybe you can talk about kind of what the purpose of that was and how you went about kind of trying to achieve your mission.
Well, between 1966 and 1996 is a long time, and in that time the taboo on psychedelics was very extreme, and so one couldn't really write about it. I tried to get doctors to do research, I tried to get scientists, I tried to get a program on 60 Minutes and this and that, and they made the film, but then the taboo always struck and it was stopped. So then I decided, as a single female with no letters after my name, it was too much of an upward push. So I decided to become a foundation. It was a kind of Trojan horse. I'd step into the horse and then play the established game from inside the establishment. So I got the very best scientists.
Some of whom are in the audience. Dave Nutt, right there, the champion over there.
And Colin Blakemore and Albert Hoffman and Shulgin and a lot of establishment scientists. And that enabled me to, I saw that there were two things we had to do. One was open the doors to scientific research to get evidence of the incredible potential of these compounds to overcome psychological illnesses like depression, addiction, etc., post-traumatic stress disorder, maybe to tackle neurophysiological conditions and have just personal transformational change. With the Beckley Foundation, I started a series of very high-level seminars at the House of Lords. I always think it's the best to shoot from the highest seat. And we invited the head of NIDA, the head of he came without an invitation, Putin's right-hand man who wanted to put an armament around Afghanistan, and politicians, presidents, all of those sort of people came. And we discussed, at least I directed the discussion towards what is the difference between cannabis and psychedelics than other drugs? Why should we deal with it differently? So that was very effective in many ways, and it was the kind of basis of an evidence-based drug policy. And then, anyway.
So
then,
I'm actually being told to hurry you up now.
Yeah.
To summarize and put words into your mouth, I think that obviously the mission of the Beckley Foundation was twofold. Use the light of science to kind of destigmatize and rehabilitate psychedelics, and also in parallel with that, and work that look at that photo Dave and Amanda have both been champions of, is addressing the kind of the discrepancies and the inconsistencies in drug policy, and trying to kind of redress that so that we can then move forward to a more sensible way of dealing with these substances. And the purpose, kind of much of the approach is doing the best possible science. So it's a science-led organization. And again, so here are some great scientists from the Beckley Imperial. So maybe you want to touch on some of the kind of key studies. Maybe why don't you talk about the brain imaging study? So, Dave showed some of those pictures already that were wonderful. Well, and I was actually one of the
yes, but he was the one we had to cancel out because he was the only person to misbehave.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But anyway, so I had always had a desperation when brain imaging came about to look at brain imaging to see how it correlates with the experience, obviously. And so the first study I set in motion was with Franz Vollenweider, looking at the changes in blood supply with a PET. But actually, we had the results I was expecting, but it never got published. Then, with wonderful Dave, me and Dave set up the Bristol and then the Beckley Imperial Research Program and did a series of breakthrough research with brain imaging, trying to see what changes underlie these extraordinary experiences. And our main finding was, strangely, in the first study we did, the psilocybin study, was a decrease in blood supply to the default mode network, which was very interesting because it's hyperactive in psychological illnesses like depression or addiction. And then also an immense, as you see in this picture, an immense increase in connectivity. And the same with LSD, which was the study we did later. And that was a study I've been waiting 50 years to do, and it was very exciting to see again the vast increase in connectivity throughout the brain. So from there, from the first, the psilocybin one, we then did the depression study for treatment-resistant depression. It was just the proof of concept study, but it had very, very good results, notionally much better than SSRIs. And so that kind of, in a way, launched a unicorn company in this sphere. And I mean, I love doing exploratory research, so that's what I'm doing. I'm then also I'm interested from the 60s in the microdosing, because I think that has an amazing possibilities of impact and bringing about change for humanity, taking it at the smaller amounts for neurodegenerative illnesses.
So I'm just going to cut in here. Okay, looking back, firstly, I guess there were some really important studies that Mum did with Dave and others around brain imaging, which Dave described beautifully, the kind of, the downregulation of the default mode network and those types of things, which was an incredibly important moment for understanding how psychedelics are working in the brain. And I think by understanding them, one should fear them less and society should fear them less and be able to use them better and safer. And then there were these kind of studies in microdosing and depression and some, which had some really exciting results. And then I think, so then kind of moving towards the future, I suppose, is what studies you're planning now, and then we can touch on some other stuff.
Right. Well, the microdosing study showed an increase in neuroplasticity. It showed an increase in BDNF, the marker of neuroplasticity. So one could see, as some people think, it's just autosuggestion, but it is not. It physiologically brings about changes. It increases attention, mood, and also pain management. So from that, now I'm since then doing research, very interesting research, using microdosing LSD with Alzheimer's, and some of our initial observatory research shows that it has the capacity to bring back the self when it's lost in the fog of Alzheimer's or dementia. And so that's a very exciting study. I'm just setting it up in Basel University with the head of geriatrics there.
So what you're hoping to see, what are you hoping to see with
I'm hoping to see a repetition of this amazing experience I had observing an old lady of 97 who was completely brought back to full consciousness and self with a microdosing of LSD regime. So we don't know if it will work because there are all different types of Alzheimer's, but it could be an amazing potential impact on aging. I'm very interested. I'm doing a lot of research into longevity with mini brains and building up how psychedelics. I'm particularly interested in LSD always because, anyway, I think it's the purest and, in a way, the best. And so I'm concentrating on this. And now I'm doing a double-headed, apart from all the other studies I'm doing, which are myriads, I won't bore them with you with them. I'll concentrate. Sorry, I only got back from Jamaica last night, and I haven't had any sleep. And so I'm doing this study, which is called the two-headed study, because one head is dealing with full-dose mystical experience. And with that, it's very, very exciting. We're delving deeper than has ever been delved before, using a Tesla 7 and doing it as a personalized study. So we'll really dig into each person's experience as they rise up and analyze, and also using MEG. So we'll use both 7 Tesla and MEG. And
as far as I'm aware, that has nothing to do with Elon Musk, before anyone gets very excited.
Why should it? Musk. I'm no good with words. And then, so that's a very exciting study I'm doing with King's and UCL, and even the wonderful Carl Friston is becoming part of it. So I'm very honoured and delighted that this study is going ahead so swiftly and wonderfully. And then with that, I'm also doing another study with multimodal research of the top level, peak experience, with fMRI, PET, MEG, and this new carnal headgear, which I know someone here knows about. And then a third, which is very exciting in this particular thing, and Cosy told me not to talk about this study, but let me quickly tell you.
I don't even know which one this is going to be. I sort of about so many.
Well, it's at Yale, and it's my old passion, which is looking at changes in blood supply, which modern science completely ignores. Underlying it, in our hypothesis, the underlying thing, the more energy comes from more blood in the brain capillaries. And up till now, one hasn't been able to distinguish between capillary blood, which is an important area, and venous and arterial. But at Yale and Cornell, we're working on a new type of microvascular imaging in mice. And interesting, the mice experience, when I said, do you notice when you trepan the mice to put the camera there, do you notice any change in pulsation? And they said, gosh, it's one of our great problems, the change in pulsation. So that comes back to another of my theories.
We're not getting into trepanation.
I've been forbidden to get to trepanation.
I'm changing the subject. We're running out of time.
But
perhaps, look at that photo of us.
Can I just finish this? But what we're going to see, I hope, is the fact we're going to analyse the blood situation for once and for all, which would be great. It's obvious common sense. Any farmer could tell you it's increased blood. But anyway.
Excellent. And so I mean, perhaps just a little little plug for Beckley Psytech. Make sure you say something nice. Maybe it's worth mentioning why we set up Beckley Psytech and perhaps the kind of ongoing relevance of, the kind of balancing the kind of the current state of play where there are all these companies coming out, but there's still the relevance of non-profit and academic research and how those live together.
Yes, absolutely. Well, my speciality is exploratory research, but obviously for it to have impact in the world, it has to become a licensed medicine. And for that, you have to go through a whole rigmarole of billions, millions of pounds worth and a lot of knowledge and everything, which I couldn't do. So I turned to Cosmo, my younger son. Well, I didn't. He came. We did it together. And it's lovely to have, the corner shop, which is
the family business.
The family business. And I think they're doing a wonderful job to the aim is to bring, obviously, these compounds to regulated medicines so they're available for everyone in the world who needs them. And I think there's a very exciting pathway that he and everyone here, it's very exciting to see the change which has happened in particularly the last 5 years. But everyone always thought I was mad and a little bit bad, whereas now one is kind of just part of the furniture. It's an accepted fact. So that
still a little bit mad.
Yes.
Well, look, I think we've run out of time. Thank goodness. So, thank you, everyone. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Everyone. Thank you.